$500 for a man's life, $1,000 if he's famous enough, $5,000 if he's terrorized a territory. In the Wild West, human hunting became a legitimate profession. The Dunn brothers weren't lawmen. They were cattle thieves who made a deal with the sheriff, hiding his own outlaw past. Together, they tracked, betrayed, and executed men they once called friends, all for the bounty on their heads. Here's the blood-soaked truth about bounty hunting in the American frontier. So, we're going back to the Wild West tonight. But before we go anywhere, get cozy. Like actually cozy pillows, good blanket situation handled perfect. Trust me on this one. Your eyes flutter open in a rough-hewn cabin somewhere in Oklahoma territory. The year is 1893. Your back aches from the thin, lumpy mattress beneath you, and the wool blanket scratches against your skin. Not like your soft, comfortable bed right now. Outside, the wind whistles through the cracks in the wooden walls. It's still dark, but dawn isn't far off. The air carries the scent of wood smoke, coffee, and gun oil. That last smell is always around these days. Everyone's armed, everyone's dangerous, and everyone's watching their back, including you. You swing your legs over the edge of bed and rise. Your boots have left a trail of red Oklahoma dust across the floor. You slept with your gun belt on again, third night in a row. But that's what happens when you're hunting human beings for money. You're basically a professional killer with a piece of paper making it legal. Yeah, welcome to the world of the Wild West bounty hunter. It's not what the dime novels make out to be. It's dirtier. It's bloodier. It's morally murkier than a creek after a cattle drive. Picture this. It's 1892, and the notorious Dalton Gang had just met their bloody end in Coffeyville, Kansas. For bandits gunned down in the street after trying to rob two banks at once. Talk about ambitious. But the gang wasn't just those five guys. They had friends, associates, fellow outlaws, and those guys, they scattered like buckshot. The law was stretched in across territories bigger than some European countries. Marshals couldn't be everywhere. So what did they do? They turned to people who knew the outlaws best. Former friends, former partners, even former criminals themselves. That's how the Dunn brothers got into the bounty hunting business. I spent months researching these guys, and let me tell you, the line between outlaw and lawman was paper thin. Sometimes it didn't exist at all. You want us to bring in the wild bunch? B. Dunn probably asked when offered the deal, and the marshals like dead or alive, preferably dead, less paperwork. That's not an exaggeration. They literally preferred outlaws dead. Hauling a live prisoner across hundreds of miles of territory was dangerous. A dead body just needed a wagon and some ice if the weather was hot. The Dunn brothers weren't exactly model citizens themselves. B. Dal Calvin and George Dunn ran a boarding house near Ingalls and a meat market in Pawnee, Oklahoma, but they also had a side hustle in cattle rustling. Yeah, criminals hunting criminals. Welcome to the frontier justice system. Their teenage sister, Rose, had even fallen in love with one of the outlaws they were now hunting, George Bitter Creek Newcomb of the Wild Bunch. Nothing complicated about that family dinner conversation, but this story really centers around two men. Frank Canton, the toughest rawhide lawman with a dark secret, and B. Dunn, a bounty hunter who'd make a deal with the devil if there was money in it. Let's back up, though. The Wild West didn't just magically become wild. By the 1890s, the American frontier was actually closing. The government had pushed across the continent in waves, claiming land by purchase, annexation, and removal of indigenous peoples. Oklahoma territory was a strange patchwork of settlements, reservations, and no-man's lands. The perfect place for outlaws to hide. And hide they did. The Wild Bunch, led by Bill Doolin, was terrorizing the region. Train robberies, bank heists, shootouts with lawmen. They were the real deal. The gang had colorful members with equally colorful nicknames. Bitter Creek Newcomb, Dynamite Dick Clifton, Tulsa Jack Blake, Red Buck Waitman, and Arkansas Tom Jones. These weren't just handled for fun. They were how people knew them. In a world before photographs were common, your reputation and nickname traveled faster than you did. Now, Frank Canton was something else entirely. As both undersheriff of Pawnee County and a deputy U.S. Marshal, he had authority, but he wasn't exactly what you'd call upstanding. There were whispers about his fondness for the bottle and his brutal methods. He had in recent years worked as a cowboy and a sheriff further west, but his early life was a mystery, or so people thought. Frank, his boss, might say, "We need the wild bunch taken care of." And Canton would just nod, King his revolver. Dead or alive, the posters say both. Treasury doesn't care which way they come in. The bounties on these outlaws' heads were serious money. $1 to $3,000 per man at a time, when a good annual salary might be $500. That's like offering $100,000 per outlaw in today's money. For poor frontier folks, that kind of reward was life-changing. The morning is coming on faster now. You pour yourself coffee that's thick enough to stand a spoon in. The cup warms your hands against the chill. Every bounty hunter has their own method. Some track footprints in broken twigs like indigenous scouts. Others work their connections, paying for tips in saloons and brothels. You've got your own method. You know these outlaws. You drank with them once, maybe robbed with them. 2. Now you're going to bring them in one way or another. Here's the thing about bounty hunting in the Wild West. It wasn't like the movies. Most bounty hunters weren't drifters who rode into town looking at wanted posters. They were lawmen supplementing their income, or locals who knew the criminals personally. The Dunn brothers knew exactly where to find some members of the Wild Bunch because they'd worked with them before. And that's where the real moral darkness creeps in. When you're hunting someone you used to call a friend, a fly buzzes around the cabin, landing on the wanted poster you've tacked to the wall. The sketch doesn't really look like Bitter Creek, but the reward amount is clear as day. $3,000 dead or alive. $3,000 reasons to betray a friend. This system created a brutal reality where outlaws couldn't trust anyone. The higher your bounty went, the more your friends started looking at you differently, calculating, wondering if you were worth more to them dead than alive. Tell me about the Dunns, people would ask years later. And old Immerse would lean in close. They weren't bounty hunters. They were bounty killers. Most people assumed the term bounty hunter was common in the Old West, but it actually wasn't used much back then. These men were called manhunters or sometimes just detectives. The profession wasn't regulated. Anyone could decide to track down a wanted man. The only credential you needed was to bring in the body. By spring of 1895, tensions were building between Frank Canton and the Dunn brothers. They were supposed to be working together to take down the Wild Bunch, but there was money involved, and where there's money, there's betrayal. B. Dunn had figured out a way to cut Canton out of the rewards. He and his brothers had a solid lead on where to find Bitter Creek Newcomb and Charlie Pierce. They just needed to get Canton out of the way first. Your coffee's done. You strap on your gun belt, tightening it a notch. Your rifle is cleaned and loaded by the door. Today's the day you're going to find your quarry. Maybe take them alive if they surrender immediately, but you're not counting on it. You step outside into the pink dawn light. The air smells like dust and sage. Your horse nickers from the small corral, already sensing a long ride ahead. This is the life you've chosen. Or maybe it chose you. Either way, you're a bounty hunter now. Judge, jury, and if necessary, executioner. All with the blessing of the law. On the horizon, there's a small dust cloud. Riders coming. Maybe it's the Dunn brothers. Maybe it's the Wild Bunch. Either way, you check your gun one more time. In this country, everyone's hunting someone, and sometimes they're hunting you right back. The morning sun breaks fully over the prairie now, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. You squint against the light, watching those distant riders draw closer. Your hand rests on your revolver. In the world of bounty hunting, hesitation means death. Frank Canton was watching his own shadows that spring. He had no idea how close his past was to catching up with him, or how much blood would be spilled before his story ended. The manhunt was about to begin in earnest, and not everyone would live to see it end. 2 weeks pass. The prairie sun beats down mercilessly as you ride alongside the Dunn brothers. 5 men with weather-beaten faces and cold eyes, their horses kicking up dust clouds that hang in the still Oklahoma air. You've thrown your lot in with them because they know things. Where the wild bunch hides, who shelters them, which saloon girls whisper secrets after midnight. Bitter Creek's got a sweet spot for our rose. Bill Dunn says, breaking the silence, man will do anything for love, even ride straight into a bullet. The other brothers laugh, but there's no humor in it, just a hollow sound of men planning a killing. The oldest brother, Bill Dunn, is the leader. B. Dal Calvin and George follow his lead without question. They're blood, and out here that means something, but they're not hunting for justice. The bounties on a wild bunch would set them up for years if they can collect, and that's the rub of bounty hunting. It wasn't enough to find your target. You had to bring them in, or at least bring enough of them back to prove they were dead. Frank Canton, still watching us, Dal mutters, checking over his shoulder for the 100th time. Don't trust that badge-wearing son of the mention of Canton makes everyone tense up. As undersheriff of Pawnee County, he should be your ally in this manhunt. But something about the man puts ice in your veins. Maybe it's his eyes. Too watchful, too knowing, like he's seen both sides of the law and isn't particularly bothered by either. Here's something they don't tell you in the dime novels. Bounty hunters weren't lone wolves. They worked in groups because taking down dangerous outlaws alone was suicide. They formed posses, made deals with local lawmen, and sometimes even conspired with other outlaws to betray their friends. The ground beneath your horse's hooves changes from prairie grass to harder packed dirt. You're nearing Ingalls, a little nothing town that's become infamous as a hideout for the wild bunch. The place has maybe 100 residents, most of whom turn a blind eye to the outlaws in their midst. Why? Because outlaws spend money. They drink expensive whiskey, buy rounds to the house, pay for rooms in cash, and don't haggle with shopkeepers. Town up ahead, Bill Dunn says, adjusting his rifle in its scabbard. We don't all ride in together. Too obvious, you nod. Smart. The Dunns might be criminals themselves, but they're not stupid. I'll go with Calvin. You say, we'll take the saloon. You boys check the boarding house. What none of you say out loud is that Rose Dunn might be at the boarding house, too. Their own sister, sleeping with the enemy. The girl is barely 17, but has already chosen her side. At least that's what her brothers think. In reality, Rose is about to become the perfect bait in their deadly trap. Back in Pawnee, Frank Canton sits at his desk, cleaning his revolver for the 3rd time today. The man is methodical, patient. His real story would shock the territory if it ever got out, because Frank Canton isn't his real name. He was born Josiah W. Joe Herr in Virginia back in 1849. As a teenager, he became a cowboy in Texas, trailing cattle north for Texas cattleman Burt Burnett. But somewhere along the way, young Joe took a wrong turn. From 1871 to 1878, he robbed banks, rustled cattle, and killed at least one man, a Buffalo soldier, during a gunfight. In 1877, authorities finally caught up with him after he robbed a bank in Comanche, Texas. But it wasn't done yet. He escaped from Texas Ranger custody and fled north to Nebraska, where he shed his outlaw identity like a snake shedding its skin. Joe Herr died on the trail, and Frank Canton rode into Wyoming a new man. Wait, what? Yeah, you heard that right. The lawman hunting down the wild bunch was himself a wanted fugitive with a fake identity. The irony gets even better. Canton eventually became sheriff of Johnson County, Wyoming, before moving to Oklahoma Territory. A bank robber turned sheriff turned bounty hunter. You almost have to admire the audacity. You think Newcomb will show? Calvin Dunn asks as you tie your horses behind the Engle Saloon. You check your pocket watch. 2:17 in the afternoon. Hot as hell. If Rose sent that letter like Bill said, he'll come running. And if he brings Pierce with him, You pat your revolver. More bounty for us. The saloon is like every other frontier watering hole. Dim, smelling of stale beer, tobacco, and unwashed bodies. A handful of men lean against the bar, eyeing you suspiciously as you enter. The piano player doesn't miss a note, but his eyes follow you. 2. Whiskey, you tell the barkeep, sliding a coin across the scarred wood. Leave the bottle. This is how you gather information. You drink, you listen, you watch. Bounty hunting wasn't just about shooting. It was about patience, about blending in until someone got drunk enough or greedy enough to tell you what you needed to know. Calvin takes a table near the back, facing the door. You lean against the bar, seemingly casual, but positioned to see the street through the grimy window. Every man who walks past gets a quick assessment. Height, build, weapons, the way they move. You're looking for Bitter Creek's distinctive limp, the result of a shootout with lawmen last year. The whiskey burns going down. 3 hours pass like molasses. The piano player changes. The crowd thins, then builds again as evening approaches. No sign of Newcomb or any of the wild bunch. Then a girl slips through the batwing doors. Young, pretty, moving with purpose. Rose Dunn. She doesn't acknowledge you or her brother. Just takes a seat at a small table and orders coffee. She's here, Calvin mutters as you refill his glass. That means they're coming. Outside, the sun begins its descent, painting the dusty street gold. Shadows lengthen. Perfect ambush weather. What's about to happen isn't a fair fight. It's not going to be a shootout at high noon with men facing each other down the middle of the street. That's movie nonsense. Real bounty hunters didn't announce themselves. They didn't give their quarry a sporting chance. They waited until their target was vulnerable, sleeping, drunk with a woman, unarmed. Then they struck fast, hard, final. Back in his office, Frank Canton reviews what he knows about the Dunn brothers. They're unreliable, but they have connections to the wild bunch that he lacks. He needs them for now, but he doesn't trust them, especially not Bill Dunn, who's been asking too many questions about Canton's past. Marshall, a deputy, interrupts his thoughts. Telegram from Engels. The Dunn have been spotted. Canton folds the paper carefully. Saddle my horse. As he straps on his gun belt, Canton considers what he knows. The Dunns plan to ambush members of the wild bunch who might be coming to visit Rose. They didn't tell Canton when or where, trying to cut him out of the reward money. Amateurs, he mutters, checking his Winchester rifle. They've forgotten the cardinal rule of the frontier. Betrayal works both ways. Night falls completely. You and Calvin have moved outside, positioning yourselves in the shadows across from the boarding house. Bill and the other brothers are spread out, covering all exits. Rose left the saloon an hour ago, presumably to wait in her room for Newcomb. Movement, Calvin whispers, nodding toward the edge of town. 2 riders moving cautiously. Even in the darkness, you can make out Bitter Creek Newcomb's lanky frame and Charlie Pierce's distinctive hat. They're armed but relaxed, expecting to visit a sweetheart, not ride into an ambush. Your mouth goes dry. This is the moment. These men are worth $5,000 together. Enough to buy a decent ranch. Enough to start fresh somewhere the Dunns aren't known as cattle thieves. You've never killed a man for money before, but there's always a first time. The 2 outlaws dismount at the hitching post outside the boarding house. They're laughing about something completely unaware. Newcomb stretches, wincing at his old wound, the one Rose's brother gave him in a previous encounter. Now Calvin breathes. You shake your head. Let them get inside first. This isn't just about making sure they don't escape. It's about the story you'll tell afterward. They went for their gun sounds better than we shot them in the street before they knew we were there. Even bounty hunters have to maintain some kind of moral fiction. But as the 2 men reach the porch steps, something changes. Newcomb stops, suddenly puts a hand on Pierce's arm. They both scan the darkness, suddenly alert. Years of living as wanted men have given them a sixth sense for danger. Something's wrong. Newcomb says loud enough for you to hear. It's too quiet. In that moment, everything unravels. Bill Dunn, impatient as always, steps out from his hiding place. Evening, Bitter Creek. He calls, rifle raised. What happens next is chaos. Guns drawn, shots fired, men scattering. Bitter Creek and Pierce dive for cover, returning fire. A window shatters. Someone screams. Probably Rose, realizing her brothers are trying to kill her lover. The air fills with smoke, and the thunderclap of revolvers. You squeeze off 2 shots, aiming for movement in the darkness. Not sure if you hit anything. Calvin curses as a bullet kicks up dirt near his feet. This is the reality of frontier violence. Not heroic duels, but confused, terrifying exchanges of gunfire where you're as likely to hit a friend as an enemy. When it's over, the silence feels absolute. Your ears ring from the gunshots. Bitter Creek and Pierce have vanished, escaping in confusion. Bill Dunn is cursing a blue streak, nursing a bullet graze on his arm. No one dead, nothing to show for the ambush except wasted ammunition and a blown opportunity. They'll be halfway to Indian territory by sunrise. B. Dunn Spitz Rose warned them somehow. The accusation hangs in the air. Their own sister betraying them for an outlaw. But you're not so sure. Something about the timing feels wrong. Newcomb and Pierce were suspicious before anything happened, before they even reached Rose. The ride back to Pawnee is silent and tense. The Dunns are furious at the failed ambush and at each other. You keep your thoughts to yourself, watching, waiting. There's more going on here than a simple bounty hunt. 2 days later, Frank Canton calls you into his office. He looks tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. The Dunns are planning something, he says without preamble. Bill's been asking questions about my time in Wyoming. You nod, waiting. Canton rarely reveals anything without purpose. I need you to stay close to them. Find out what they're planning. They don't trust me, you point out. Not after Engels. Canton's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Make them trust you. Tell them I've been skimming bounty money. Tell them whatever they want to hear. That night, you find me Dunn in his usual corner of the saloon. He's drunk, angry about the failed ambush. It doesn't take much to get him talking. Bill says Canton ain't who he claims to be. He slurs leaning close. Says he's actually some outlaw from Texas. Joe something. Your blood runs cold, but you keep your face neutral. That's a serious accusation. B shrugs. Bill's got connections in Wyoming. Says Canton was a hired gun for the cattle barons during some range war. Killed innocent homesteaders. This is bigger than you thought. If the Dunns expose Canton, the entire territorial justice system could be compromised. A fugitive posing as a lawman for years. The newspapers would have a field day. What's Bill planning to do with this information? You ask carefully. B's smile is ugly. Leverage. Ken's been holding out on bounty money. We aim to get our fair share now. The plot is simple. Blackmail. The Dunns know Canton's secret and plan to use it to extort money from him. But they've underestimated the man. Canton didn't survive this long by letting himself be cornered. Back at your cabin, you consider your options. Warn Canton. Let the Dunns spring their trap. There's money to be made either way, but also bodies likely to drop. The question is whose body you want to avoid being among them. By May 1895, the situation has reached a breaking point. The Dunns and Canton have been locked in a silent war of wills, neither side making a direct move. The bounty hunting continues. There are still members of the wild bunch at large, but the atmosphere is poisonous with suspicion. Then something unexpected happens. Bitter Creek Newcomb and Charlie Pierce reappear at the Dunn family's own home. Rose has maintained contact with her outlaw lover, and he's foolish enough to visit her right under her brother's noses. It's May 2nd, a perfect spring day when Bitter Creek and Pierce ride up to the Dunn house to visit Rose. What they don't know is that her brothers are waiting, watching through the windows, fingers on triggers. As the two outlaws dismount, the Dunn brothers open fire without warning. No chance to surrender. No pretense of arrest. Just cold-blooded killing for the bounty money. Bitter Creek and Pierce fall riddled with bullets, dead before they hit the ground. Rose screams, running to her lover's body, but it's too late. The man she loved is gone, betrayed and murdered by her own blood. The Dunn brothers stand over the bodies, not with regret, but with calculation. $5,000 for Newcomb, another $5,000 for Pierce. 10,000 reasons to kill men they once called friends. When Canton arrives hours later, the bodies are already loaded on a wagon bound for Guthrie, where Marshal Everett Nix will pay the bounty. The undersheriff takes one look at the scene and knows exactly what happened. "You didn't even try to take them alive," he says, his voice flat. Bill Dunn shrugs. Poster says dead or alive. They're just as dead as they need to be. What Canton notices, what you notice, too, is something disturbing about the bodies. The bullet wounds aren't consistent with men who were shot during a gunfight. The pattern suggests men who were lying down, perhaps sleeping when the bullets tore into them, executed, murdered in cold blood. But the territorial authorities aren't about to quibble over how outlaws met their end. Dead is dead, and the bounty will be paid just the same. This is the dark reality of frontier justice. The line between lawman and outlaw wasn't just thin. Sometimes it didn't exist at all. The same man could be both, depending on which side of a wanted poster his face appeared. As the wagon pulls away with its grim cargo, you catch Canton watching Bill Dunn with a calculating expression. The undersheriff knows the Dunns are planning to expose him, and now they've just proven how casually they're willing to kill. The hunters have become the hunted, and only one side can survive what's coming next. The bodies of Bitter Creek Newcomb and Charlie Pierce lie side by side on crude wooden tables in the undertaker's back room. Flies buzz in the May heat, already drawn to the blood-soaked clothes. Marshal Everett Nix circles the corpses, nodding with grim satisfaction. $10,000, he says to the Dunn brothers. $5,000 each. That's a fair price for these two. Bill Dunn spits tobacco juice onto the floor. We earned every penny. You hang back in the shadows watching. The smell of death and formaldehyde makes your stomach turn, but you keep your face neutral. Show weakness in this company, and you become a target. Canton stands off to the side, his eyes fixed not on the bodies, but on the Dunn brothers. There's something calculating in his gaze, like a man tallying debts that will soon come due. How'd you manage to get the drop on them? Nix asks, looking at the bullet wounds. Bitter Creek was quick on the draw. They came to see our Rose, George Dunn says. Weren't expecting trouble from family. The words hang in the air, betraying family. There's nothing lower out here except maybe betraying friends. The Dunns have now done both. After the bounty paperwork is signed, you follow the brothers to the bank. $10,000 gets counted out in crisp bills. More money than most frontier folk will see in a decade. The banker's hands tremble slightly as he counts. Everyone knows where this money came from. Blood money. Your cut, Bill Dunn says later, sliding $500 across the table to you back at the saloon for keeping watch. It's less than agreed upon, but you know better than to argue. The Dunns aren't in a generous mood, especially with Canton breathing down their necks. Plus, there's the matter of Rose. The girl hasn't spoken to her brothers since the killings. Some say she's left town entirely, unable to live with the men who murdered her lover. What about Canton? You ask quietly. He knows. Knows what? B. Dunn's voice has a dangerous edge. That Newcomb and Pierce weren't shot in self-defense. Those wounds tell a different story. The Dunn brothers exchange glances. Don't matter, Bill finally says. Dead is dead. Reward's the same either way. He's right about the reward, but wrong about what matters. In the Wild West, reputation was everything, and word is spreading about how the Dunn brothers operate. Not as legitimate bounty hunters taking dangerous men alive when possible, but as cold-blooded killers who shoot a man in his sleep if there was money in it. Back at his office, Canton pulls a file from his desk. Inside are telegrams from Wyoming, letters from Texas, wanted posters with faces that look eerily familiar. He's been building this file on the Dunn brothers for months. Not for any official investigation. This is personal. Canton takes a bottle from his drawer and pours a generous measure. The whiskey burns, but it steadies his hands. The Dunns know his secret. It's only a matter of time before they try to use it against him. He needs to strike first. But there's a complication. Word has come down from Judge Isaac Parker, the infamous hanging judge of Fort Smith, Arkansas. He wants the rest of the wild bunch taken care of. And he doesn't much care how it happens. The three guardsmen, legendary lawman Heck Thomas, Bill Tillman, and Chris Madsen, have been authorized to form posses and hunt down the remaining outlaws by any means necessary. The Dunns, despite their questionable methods, are now part of those posses. They've got Heck Thomas's ear, and the old manhunter values results over propriety. If Canton moves against the Dunns now, he'll have more enemies than he can handle. So he waits, watches, plans. Summer arrives with brutal heat. The manhunt for the wild bunch intensifies. Bill Doolin, the gang's leader, has gone aground, but rumors place him near Lawson in what will eventually become Pawnee County. His wife and child are there, and even outlaws get homesick. You ride with different posses over these months. Sometimes with the Dunns, sometimes with other lawmen. The rewards keep coming. Smaller than the Newcomb and Pierce bounties, but steady. You've saved nearly $2,000. Enough to maybe buy land somewhere. People don't know your name or your deeds. One sweltering afternoon, you find yourself riding alongside Heck Thomas himself. The legendary manhunter is in his 50s now. Face weather like old saddle leather, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He's tracked more outlaws than anyone in the territories. You've been riding with the Dunns. Thomas says, not a question. Some, you admit they know the territory. Thomas snorts. They know it because they've broken the law across most of it. Bill Dunn was rustling cattle before he started collecting bounties. People change, you offer, not believing it yourself. No, Thomas shakes his head. They don't. They just find new ways to be who they've always been. The words stick with you, especially when you think about Frank Canton. Has he changed or just found a new outlet for his outlaw instincts? September brings cooler weather and a breakthrough in the hunt for Bill Doolin. The wild bunch leader has been spotted in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Bill Tillman, the quietest and deadliest of the three guardsmen, volunteers to go after him alone. Too many men spook him. Tillman explains at the planning meeting. I'll bring him in, dead or alive. Bill Dunn asks, a hungry look in his eyes. Tillman's gaze is cold. The law prefers him alive. Done. Justice is supposed to happen in courtrooms, not back alleys. The rebuke is clear. The Dunn's reputation has spread even among hardened lawmen. There are lines you don't cross. Killing unarmed men in their sleep. That's murder, not justice. No matter what the wanted poster says. While Tillman heads to Arkansas, tension builds in Pawnee. The Dunns, flush with reward money, have been drinking heavily, bragging about their kills. Bill Dunn in particular has been hinting that he knows things about certain lawmen that could end careers or worse. Canton avoids the saloons, keeps to himself, but he's watching, always watching. You find yourself caught between worlds. The Dunns still consider you one of their posse, but Canton has been asking you to report on their movements. Double-crossing bounty hunters is a dangerous game, but then again, so is bounty hunting itself. Dunn's planning something. You tell Canton one evening meeting behind the livery stable. He's been talking to that butcher who got arrested for receiving stolen cattle last year. The one the Dunns used to sell to. Canton nods. I know. I've been watching him, too. Why not just arrest him? You got plenty on him by now. The undersheriff's smile is cold. It's complicated. The Dunn have friends in high places now. Those bounties bought them influence. What Canton doesn't say. What he doesn't need to say is that the Dunn also have something on him. Knowledge that could destroy everything he's built. January 1896, brings the news. Tillman has captured Bill Doolin alive in Eureka Springs. It's a sensation. The leader of the wild bunch, taken without a shot fired by one man walking into a bathhouse and placing a gun against Doolin's head while he's soaked in a tub. That's how it's done. Thomas tells anyone who will listen in the Porney Saloon. Clean professional Doolin will hang after a proper trial. The Dunn brothers fume. There's no bounty to collect since Tillman made the arrest as an official lawman. $20,000. The highest bounty ever offered in the territory. Gone. But the story doesn't end there. 2 weeks after his capture, Bill Doolin escapes from the Guthrie jail along with several other prisoners, including Dynamite Dick Clifton. The manhunt begins anew with even higher stakes. Doolin is now not just an outlaw, but a fugitive who's humiliated the law. Double the reward. Nix announces, $40,000 for Doolin, dead or alive. The territory explodes with bounty hunters, lawmen, and posses, all searching for the escaped outlaw. The 3 guardsmen coordinate the official manhunt, but dozens of independent operators join the chase, drawn by the massive reward. Among them, the Dunn brothers are particularly determined. $40,000 would set them up for life. They could leave the territories entirely, head California, or back east where no one knows their names or deeds. We'll find him first. Bill Dunn promises, checking his rifles. We've got sources the lawmen don't. What he means, though he doesn't say aloud, is that they're willing to use methods the lawmen won't. Torture, threats against family members, burning down houses to flush out hiding outlaws. The brutal winter gives way to spring. Still no sign of Doolin. The manhunt continues, but with less intensity as other crimes demand attention. The frontier doesn't pause its violence just because one famous outlaw is at large. Then in April, B. Dunn receives word from an informant. Doolin has been spotted near his wife's family home outside Lawson. He's risking everything to visit his wife and young son. We move tonight. Bill Dunn tells his brothers, just us, no lawmen to split the reward with. You're included in the plan by default. The Dunns need every gun they can trust. And while they don't fully trust you, they believe money keeps you loyal. They're not entirely wrong. The ambush is set for the small farmhouse where Doolin's wife is staying. 6 men with rifles surrounding a sleeping house, waiting for one of the most dangerous men in the territory to walk into their trap. Hours pass. Midnight comes and goes. Your legs cramp from crouching in the underbrush, but you dare not move. The Dunns are in position, patient as spiders. Just before dawn, a lone rider approaches. He's cautious, circling the property once before dismounting. Even in the faint pre-dawn light, you recognize Bill Doolin from the wanted posters. He moves with a slight limp, an old wound that never healed right. He ties his horse to a post, checks his guns, then heads to the back door of the farmhouse. No one moves. The plan is to take him inside, where there's less chance of him escaping in the darkness. 10 minutes pass, then 20. Bill Dunn gives the signal. 3 short whistles, barely audible. You move toward the house with the others, spreading out to cover all exits. Through a window, you see lamplight Doolin reuniting with his wife and child. Something twists in your gut. This doesn't feel like justice. It feels like an ambush on a family moment. Bill Dunn kicks in the front door. Doolin hands up. What follows is chaos. Gunshots, screaming, breaking glass. Doolin fires back from somewhere inside. His bullets, splintering the doorframe inches from your head. A woman's voice, his wife, begging everyone to stop. In the confusion, something unexpected happens. Doolin manages to slip out a back window, firing as he goes. He makes it to his horse, despite taking what looks like a bullet to the shoulder. The Dunns fire after him, but in the darkness they miss. Follow him. Bill Dunn roars, already running for his own horse. The chase is on. 5 riders pursuing one wounded man across the Oklahoma countryside. Doolin is desperate, riding hard despite his injury. He knows what capture means. Either death on the spot or return to jail, followed by a hangman's noose. Dawn breaks fully as you crest a hill and spot Doolin's horse, Royalist, grazing by a creek. The outlaw has gone aground. Spread out Bill orders. He can't have gone far, not bleeding like that. You fan out through the brush and trees along the creek, every sense heightened, listening for movement, watching for disturbed ground or broken branches. This is the most dangerous moment in any manhunt, when the quarry is cornered, wounded with nothing to lose. A gunshot cracks the morning silence. Then another. You run toward the sound, heart pounding through the trees. You see Be Done on the ground, clutching his leg. Blood seeps between his fingers. 20 yards away, Doolin is reloading his revolver behind a fallen log. Bill Dunn crashes through the underbrush, firing wildly. Doolin returns fire, more disciplined, making each shot count. It's an uneven match. 1 wounded man against 4 hunters. The outcome is inevitable. When it's over, Bill Doolin lies dead. 5 bullets in his body, none from your gun. You held back, watching rather than participating. Bill Dunn stands over the outlaw's corpse, a strange expression on his face. Not triumph, not relief. Something closer to disappointment, as if he's lost his purpose along with his quarry. $40,000, he says. Finally, get him on a horse. We're taking him to Guthrie. B's wound isn't serious. A clean shot through the meaty part of his thigh. He'll recover, though he'll have a limp to match the man who gave it to him. As you help load Doolin's body across his own horse, you realize something has changed. The hunt is over. The wild bunch is effectively finished. There are still a few members at large, but without Doolin, they're just scattered outlaws, not a gang. More importantly, the Dunns have served their purpose as far as the law is concerned. The dangerous criminals are dead or captured. The territories are safer, but men like the Dunns don't just fade away when they're no longer useful. They find new targets, new sources of income. And Frank Canton is watching them, waiting for his moment. Back in Guthrie, Marshal Nix personally counts out the reward money, $40,000 in stacks of fresh bills. The Dunn divide it 5 ways, $8,000 each. Your share is enough to buy that land you've been dreaming of. Enough to start fresh somewhere far from Oklahoma territory. But something holds you back. The story isn't over. There's a reckoning coming between Canton and the Dunns. And somehow, you know you'll be caught in the middle when it happens. We're heading to California. Bill Dunn tells you as you leave the marshal's office. Once B's leg heals up, nothing left for us here. You nod non-committal. Good luck. You should come along, he adds, surprising you. We work well together. Could be opportunities out west. Before you can answer, you spot Frank Canton across the street watching. The undersheriff tips his hat, a gesture that seems almost mocking. Bill Dunn follows your gaze and his expression hardens. That badge-wearing son of he mutters, "Think I don't know what he's planning. He's been building a case against us for months. For what you ask, though you already know. For Newcomb and Pierce says we executed them." Dunn spits like it matters how outlaws die. It matters to Canton, and soon it will matter to everyone in Pawnee County. As summer approaches, the Dunns remain in Oklahoma despite their talk of California. B's leg is healing slowly, and Bill has unfinished business with Frank Canton. The tension between them has become an open secret in Pawnee. 2 predators circling each other waiting for weakness. Watch yourself. Heck Thomas warns you one hot afternoon. When those 2 finally clash, anyone nearby is liable to get caught in the crossfire. You nod, appreciating concern from the legendary manhunter. I've been thinking of moving on. Thomas studies you for a moment. You got the makings of a good lawman, you know, not like the Dunns. They're just killers with temporary permission. The words stay with you as you ride back to your cabin. Maybe there's another path. Maybe the blood money in your pocket doesn't have to define your future. But first, you need to survive what's coming. Because Frank Canton isn't just building a case against the Dunns. He's planning to eliminate them entirely. And the Dunn know it. The storm clouds are gathering over Pawnee County. And when the lightning strikes, it will change the territory forever. Summer in Oklahoma Territory brings sweltering heat that seems to ignite tempers as readily as it does the dry prairie grass. You've taken to sleeping outside your cabin most nights. The interior too stifling, even with windows open. The Doolin bounty money sits hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Inside, still mostly untouched. Every time you think about spending it, something holds you back. It's not guilt exactly, more like caution. Money earned from death has a way of bringing more death along with it. The Dunns haven't left for California as planned. B's leg is healing, but there's another reason for their delayed departure. Bill Dunn has been meeting with territorial politicians in Guthrie, using his newfound wealth to buy influence. The bounty hunter who helped eliminate the Wild Bunch now finds doors open to him that were previously shut tight. Frank Canton knows this. He watches from the shadows, gathering information, building his case piece by piece. The undersheriff rarely sleeps these days, driven by something beyond mere duty. The feud between him and the Dunn has become personal, though few understand how deep it runs. Canton's digging into our past. Bill Dunn tells you one evening at the saloon he's invited you to drink with him and his brothers. A calculated show of trust. Got people asking questions back in Texas about cattle we sold years ago. You sip your whiskey slowly. Statute of limitations must be up on that by now. Ain't about the law. B. Dunn interjects. His injured leg is propped on a chair, the wound still seeping enough to stain his bandages. It's about reputation. Man gets known as a cattle thief. Certain doors close to him. The irony isn't lost on you. The Dunns are worried about being labeled thieves, while proudly wearing the mantle of killers. What's Canton's game, you ask? Fishing for information you can bring back to the undersheriff later. This double role has become dangerously comfortable. Bill leans forward, lowering his voice. We know things about him. Things that would end more than just his career. And he knows we know. Dal and George Dunn exchange glances, but say nothing. Calvin stares into his glass, seemingly distracted. The brothers aren't as unified as they once were. The money has created new tensions between them. Dal wants to leave immediately for California. George has been talking about buying a ranch in Wyoming. Only Bill and B seem determined to stay and confront Canton. What about you? Bill asks suddenly. You sticking around or moving on? You shrug, non-committal. Haven't decided yet. Well, decide soon, B says with surprising heat. Way things are heading. Folks are going to have to pick sides. Can't sit on the fence forever. The next morning, you relay the conversation to Canton in the livery stable where his horse is being shod. The undersheriff listens impassively, his face revealing nothing. They're right about one thing. He says finally, people will have to choose sides. And what side am I on exactly, you ask, irritated by his cryptic manner. Canton studies you for a long moment. That depends. Do you believe there's a difference between hunting outlaws and murdering them in their sleep? Before you can answer, the blacksmith approaches with Canton's horse. The animal's hooves clop on the packed earth. Fresh shoes gleaming in the morning sun. Good work. Canton tells the smith, paying him extra. Horse needs to be ready for hard riding. Might be leaving town soon. The comment catches your attention. Going somewhere? Just being prepared. Canton's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Storm's coming. That evening, news spreads through Pawnee that changes everything. B. Dunn has received a commission as a special deputy U.S. Marshal. The appointment comes directly from Marshal Nix's office, bypassing the normal channels. Bill Dunn's political connections have paid off in spectacular fashion. A deputy marshal. Canton says when you bring him the news. He's at his desk, cleaning his revolver with methodical precision. That's a clever move. Now, if I move against him, I'm attacking a federal officer. You still planning to move against him? Canton reassembles his gun with practiced ease, checking the action twice before holstering it. He murdered those men. Newcomb and Pierce shot them while they were sleeping, then claimed self-defense. That's not law. That's not even bounty hunting. That's just killing for money. The reward poster said dead or alive. You point out there's a difference between killing a man who's shooting at you and executing him in his bed. Canton's voice is cold. The Dunn cross that line. They'll cross others if they're not stopped. You can't argue with his logic, but something doesn't add up. Canton's crusade against the Dunns feels too personal, too driven. There's more to this story than he's telling. What's your real history with the Dunn? You ask directly. Canton's eyes narrow. What do you mean? This isn't just about Newcomb and Pierce. There's something else. Something between you and Bill Dunn specifically. For a moment, you think Canton will deny it or deflect. Instead, he sighs heavily, suddenly looking older than his years. Bill Dunn has been asking questions in Wyoming about my time there during the Johnson County War. The Johnson County War. Even out in the territories, people had heard of the bloody conflict between wealthy cattlemen and small ranchers in Wyoming. Hired guns, mass killings. The U.S. cavalry called in to restore order. You were a sheriff there, you say, remembering bits of Canton's background. He stares out the window, eyes focused on something distant. I also worked for the Wyoming Stock Growers Association. They hired protection during the Troubles. Protection, a euphemism for mercenaries. Hire guns. The pieces start falling into place. The Dunns found out you did something during that war, something that could ruin you. Canton turns back to you, his face a mask. Let's just say I was on the wrong side of history. And Bill Dunn is the type to use that kind of information. The next few days pass in tense anticipation. B. Dunn proudly wears his deputy marshal badge around town, making sure Canton sees it. The brothers frequent the saloons, buying drinks for anyone who will stand with them, building their own coalition. Canton works quietly, methodically. He revived the old cattle rustling charges against B. Dunn, finding new witnesses, building a legal case that even Dunn's new badge can't deflect. It's a chess match between two ruthless men, each moving pieces into position for the final confrontation. You keep your head down, playing both sides, passing selective information to each camp. It's a dangerous game, but it keeps you valuable to both parties. And that means alive. On a sweltering afternoon in early August, you're in the general store when Dow Dunn bursts through the door. Canton's done it. He announces to his brothers who are pricing new rifles. Got the butcher to testify against me about the stolen cattle. Judge issued a warrant this morning. Bill Dunn's face darkens with fury. He wouldn't dare arrest a deputy marshal. Warrant's already with the sheriff. Dow insists they'll be coming for B any time now. The store falls silent. Even the shopkeeper stops pretending to rearrange merchandise, frozen in place by the tension. Let them come, B says, touching the badge on his chest. I'm a federal officer now. Canton's just a county undersheriff. He tries to arrest me. He'll regret it. The brothers leave, but not before Bill Dunn fixes you with a suspicious stare. You coming? You make a show of checking the supplies you've been gathering. Got to finish here. I'll catch up. Once they're gone, you slip out the back and head straight for Canton's office. The undersheriff is already strapping on his gun belt when you enter. The Dunns know about the warrant. You tell him without preamble. Canton nods, unsurprised. I figured they would. Too many loose lips in the courthouse. B says he'll resist arrest. Says his marshal's badge trumps your authority. He's wrong. Canton checks his revolver one final time. A deputy marshal commission doesn't erase past crimes, especially not when those crimes are committed in my jurisdiction. You follow Canton out to the street, uncertain of your role in what's about to unfold. The undersheriff seems to sense your hesitation. You don't have to be part of this, he says, surprisingly gentle. You've done your part bringing information. What happens next? It's between me and the Dunns. Before you can respond, a shout comes from down the street. B. Dunn stands in front of the saloon, his brothers flanking him. His deputy marshal's badge gleams in the afternoon sun, as does a revolver strapped to his hip. Canton, he calls, his voice carrying across the dusty street. Heard you've been looking for me. People scatter, diving into doorways and between buildings. Everyone in Pawnee knows what's coming. They've seen it building for weeks. Canton walks forward with measured steps. You hang back, hand hovering near your own gun, unsure which side you'll support if bullets start flying. I have a warrant for your arrest done. Canton says calmly when he's 20 paces away. Cattle rustling, Judge Parker's court. I'm a deputy United States Marshal. B responds, thumbs hooked in his belt near his holster. You got no authority over me. The badge doesn't wash away your crimes. Come peacefully and you'll get a fair trial. Bill Dunn steps forward, positioning himself slightly behind his brother. We all know there's nothing fair about this. Canton, this is personal. The law isn't personal. Canton responds. But there's something in his tone that betrays him. This is personal, deeply so. The law. Bill laughs harshly. That's rich coming from you, Joe. The name falls like a thunderclap in the silent street. Joe Herr. You've never heard it before, but Canton's reaction tells you everything. The undersheriff goes rigid, his face draining of color. That's right. Bill continues, sensing advantage. We know who you really are. The Texas bank robber who escaped jail and made himself a new identity. The outlaw who became a lawman. Canton doesn't deny it. His silence is confirmation enough. You arrest my brother, Bill says, and everyone in the territory will know Frank Canton doesn't exist. That the great lawman is just a fugitive playing dress-up. For a long moment, no one moves. The tension stretches like a bowstring pulled too tight. Then Canton does something unexpected. He smiles. You think that matters now after all this time? His voice is calm, almost amused. I've spent 20 years on this side of the law. Caught more outlaws than you've had hot meals. My record speaks for itself. Your record be snarls. You're a wanted man, Canton. Or should I call you? Once folks know the truth, you'll be the one in chains. Canton's smile fades. Maybe. But first, you're coming with me. Badge or no badge. Everything happens at once. B's hand drops to his gun. Canton moves with the speed of a striking snake, his revolver clearing leather before B's fingers close around his grip. A single shot cracks the air. B staggers backward, a look of shock on his face. A dark stain spreads across his shirt, directly over his heart. He falls without a word, dead before he hits the dirt. Bill Dunn roars with rage, reaching for his own weapon, but Dal grabs his arm, holding him back. Not here, Dal hisses. Not like this. He'll kill you, too. The street is frozen in tableau. Canton standing with his smoking gun still raised. Be sprawled in the dirt, blood pooling beneath him. The remaining brothers paralyzed between grief and fury. Anyone else want to resist arrest? Canton asks quietly, his eyes locked on Bill Dunn. The standoff stretches for 10 heartbeats. 20. Then Bill slowly raises his hands, stepping away from his dead brother. This isn't over, Canton, he says, voice raw with emotion. Not by a long shot. It never is, Canton replies, holstering his weapon. Get your brother's body to the undertaker. Then get out of my town, all of you. The Dunns retreat, carrying B's lifeless form between them. The crowd that had hidden during the confrontation now emerges, murmuring in shocked tones. Deputy Marshal B. Dunn, shot dead in the street by Under Sheriff Frank Canton. It's the stuff of dime novel legends already growing in the telling as people spread the news. You approach Canton, who stands alone in the street staring after the Dunns. Joe Herr, you ask quietly. Canton doesn't look at you. A ghost from another life. A man who died a long time ago. Bill Dunn will spread the story. Your secret's out. Let him. Canton finally turns to you. Some secrets lose their power once they're told. And some men can't be destroyed by their past. As the sun sets on Pawnee, casting long shadows across the street where B. Dunn died, you realize the story is far from over. Bill Dunn isn't the type to accept defeat or the death of his brother. He'll be back with a plan for revenge that will shake the territory to its core. And Frank Canton or Joe Herr will be waiting for him. A lawman with an outlaw's instincts. A man who understands exactly how dangerous his enemy is. Because in the Wild West, a badge didn't make you a lawman any more than a wanted poster made you an outlaw. What mattered was which side of the gun you were on when the shooting started, and who was left standing when the smoke cleared. That night you lie awake on your bed roll outside the cabin, staring at stars that seem impossibly distant from the blood and dust of human concerns. The territory feels different now, charged with anticipation. Word of Dunn's death will spread like wildfire. The remaining brothers will regroup, plan their next move. Canton will prepare for their return. And you're still caught between worlds, between loyalties. The bounty money still sits beneath your floorboard. Blood money that seems to whisper your name in the darkness. Maybe it's time to take it and ride out. Head west of California or north to the gold fields. Leave the Dunns in Canton to their private war. But something tells you it's already too late for that. You're a part of this story now, whether you want to be or not. And in the Wild West, stories like these only end one way, with more blood in the dust. Dawn creeps over Pawnee with somber light. The town feels different after yesterday's killing. People move faster, speak quieter, cast nervous glances toward the undertakers where Dunn's body awaits burial. No one lingers in the street where he fell. You saddle your horse early, planning to ride the perimeter town, checking if the remaining Dunn brothers have left as Canton ordered, or if they're regrouping nearby. The weight of your revolver against your hip is somehow more noticeable today after seeing how fast Canton drew. You've been practicing your own quick draw in private, painfully aware of the gap between your skills and his. Heading out, the voice startles you. Canton stands in the shadow of the livery stable, looking like he hasn't slept at all. His eyes are bloodshot but alert. To scouting, you answer, tightening your cinch, seeing if the Dunn's cleared out. Canton nods. They won't go far, not with B in the ground. You really think they'll come back after what happened to B? The undersheriff's laugh is without humor. You don't know Bill Dunn very well if you're asking that question. He's right. Of course, men like Bill Dunn don't just walk away from a brother's killing badge or no badge. Revenge isn't just likely, it's inevitable. What about your situation? You ask carefully. The whole Joe thing. Canton's face hardens. Already sent telegrams to the governor and Marshal Nix explaining the situation. Got ahead of Bill Dunn's version. And we'll see. He shrugs with forced casualness. 20 years of solid lawman work against an old Texas warrant might be enough. Might not be too. That's the part he doesn't say. Even in 1896, bureaucracy moves slow. By the time officials decide whether Frank Canton keeps his badge or gets shipped back to Texas in chains, Bill Dunn could have put him in the ground beside his brother. Watch yourself out there, Canton says as you mount up. The Dunns have friends. The morning air is cool as you ride out of town. A brief respite before the day's heat. Your horse's hooves kick up little dust clouds that hang in the still air. The land around Pawnee is mostly flat with scattered stands of trees marking creek beds. Perfect ambush country. You ride carefully, scanning the horizon, noting the movement of birds that might signal humans disturbing their usual patterns. 2 hours out, you spot what you're looking for. Smoke from a campfire hidden in a grove of cottonwoods along a creek. Approaching cautiously, you leave your horse tied 100 yards away and proceed on foot. Voices drift through the trees, angry and determined, not waiting for some circuit judge. Bill Dunn's distinctive growl carries clearly. Canton shot me down like a dog. Badge, don't give him that right. He'll claim self-defense. Another voice. Sounds like Dow. B went for his gun first because Canton pushed him to it. Bill snaps, backed him into a corner. You edge closer, staying low in the thick underbrush, through gaps in the foliage. You can make out 3 men, Bill, Dow, and George Dunn, huddled around a small fire. Calvin is nowhere to be seen. We do this smart. Bill continues calmer now. Not a straight-up fight in the street. Canton's too fast for that. We need an edge. What kind of edge? George asks. Bill stirs a fire with a stick, face grim in the flickering light. The kind that comes from knowing a man's schedule, his habits, when he'll be vulnerable. He doesn't drink much, Dal points out. Doesn't visit whorehouses. Man's careful. Everyone's got weak spots, Bill insists. Even the great Frank Canton. You've heard enough. Slowly, carefully, you back away from the camp. Once clear, you hurry to your horse and ride hard for Porny. Cannon needs to know the Dunns are planning an ambush, but halfway back you rein in hard, suddenly uncertain. Who are you really working for in this fight? Canton's been straight with you mostly, but he's living a lie as big as Texas. The Dunns are killers, but their grievance is real. Canton did go into drawing, giving himself the excuse to shoot. There's no clean side here, just men with guns and grudges, all waist deep in blood. You sit your horse on a small rise overlooking the town, caught between loyalties. The smart play would be to grab your bounty money and ride out. Let Canton and the Dunns settle their feud without you in the middle. But running feels wrong somehow, like leaving a story half-finished. By the time you ride back into Porny, it's mid-afternoon. The town is buzzing with news. Frank Canton has been suspended, pending investigation into his true identity. The telegram came from the territorial governor himself. Canton's been ordered to surrender his badge and guns until authorities sort out whether he's a legitimate lawman or an escaped Texas fugitive. You find him at his house on the edge of town, a small, neat cabin with a front porch where he sits cleaning his rifle. His badge is conspicuously absent from his chest. They suspended you, you say, dismounting. News travels fast. He doesn't look up from his work, hands moving with practiced efficiency over the weapon's parts. You turning in your guns. Now he does look up, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. What do you think? I think the Dunns are camped at Cottonwood Creek. You say, making your choice, planning how to kill you. Bill wants to catch you somewhere isolated. Avoid a straight-up fight. Canton nods, unsurprised. Smart. He knows I'd drop him like I'd be if we faced off. So, what's your plan? He slides the last piece of the rifle back into place. The click unervingly final in the quiet afternoon. My plan is to end this today. How? You're suspended. If you kill Bill Dunn now, it'll look like murder. It'll be self-defense. Canton stands, slinging the rifle. Bill's coming for me. Either way, I'm just choosing the battlefield. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, Porny grows quiet. Word is spread about Canton's suspension and the Dunn's proximity. Folks are battening down, preparing for the storm everyone can feel coming. You find yourself in the saloon, nursing a whiskey, listening to the town gossip. The story of Canton and the Dunns has grown with each telling. Some say Canton was a famous Texas outlaw who killed 20 men before becoming a lawman. Others claim the Dunn have recruited a dozen gunmen to help them take revenge. The truth, as usual, is both less and more dramatic than the tales. You rode with them both. A weathered cowboy says, sliding onto barstool beside you, the Dunns and Canton, what's your read on how this ends? You consider your whiskey-buying time bloody. You finally answer. It ends bloody, he nods sagely. Always does with men like that. Too much pride, too much history, too many guns, you add. The doors swing open and conversation halts as Bill Dunn steps into the saloon. He's alone, dusty from the trail, face haggard with grief and rage. His eyes scan the room before settling on you. There he is, he says loud enough for everyone to hear. Canton's little spy. The cowboy beside you vacates his stool with remarkable speed. Others edge toward doors and windows. No one wants to be caught in what's coming. I'm just having a drink. Bill, you say, keeping your voice level, not looking for trouble. Bit late for that. He approaches, stopping just out of arm's reach. Saw your tracks out by our camp. Following us? Were you running back to Canton with reports? There's no point denying it. He deserved to know you were planning to bushwhack him. Bill's laugh is bitter. And what did he tell you about himself? About Joe Herr, the bank robbing, jail-breaking outlaw who reinvented himself as a lawman? Did he mention that part? He didn't deny it. No, he wouldn't. Canton's not stupid. Bill signals the barkeep for a whiskey. The man delivers it with shaking hands, then retreats. You know what the funny part is? I don't even care that he used to be an outlaw. Hell, half the lawmen out here started on the wrong side of a wanted poster. Then what do you care about? Bill knocks back his whiskey in one swallow, grimacing at the burn. He killed my brother, shot him down in the street like a dog. His voice cracked slightly. B was hot-headed, sure, but he didn't deserve to die over some ancient cattle rustling charge. For a moment, Bill Dunn isn't the notorious bounty hunter or the cattle thief. He's just a man grieving his brother, wounded and dangerous in his pain. What are you planning, Bill? You ask, though you already know. What do you think? I'm going to kill Frank Canton. He says it matter-of-factly, like commenting on the weather. Only question is whether you're going to try to stop me. Your hand rests near your revolver. Bill notices his own hand hovering near his weapon. The saloon has emptied around you. Even the barkeep ducking behind his bar. Just you and Bill Dunn one wrong word away from guns being drawn. I'm not dying for Frank Canton, you say carefully. But I'm not helping you kill him either. Bill studies you, weighing your words, measuring your resolve. Finally, he nods slightly. Fair enough. Stay out of the way. Then, this ends today one way or another. He backs toward the door, never taking his eyes off you. At the threshold, he pauses. B wasn't a bad man. You know, none of us are what the stories make us out to be. Not even Canton. Then he's gone, boots crunching on the boardwalk outside, heading toward Canton's cabin on the edge of town. You release a breath you didn't realize you were holding. The barkeep emerges from hiding, pale-faced. You best warn Canton, he says, wiping nervous sweat from his forehead. Dunn's got that killing look in his eye, but you hesitate. Maybe this isn't your fight. Maybe the smart play is still to grab your money and ride out. The sun hangs low now, painting Porny in shades of red and gold. The perfect light for a showdown. At Canton's cabin, preparations are already underway. The undersheriff sits on his porch, revolver on his lap, rifle leaning against a wall beside him. He's positioned himself with clear sight lines to all approaches. Impossible to sneak up on. Bill Dunn's on his way. You announce, reining in your horse. Just left the saloon. He's coming to kill you. Canton nods, unsurprised. Figured it would be today. Sun's almost down. Last chance before full dark. You could leave, you suggest. Ride out. Come back when things cool down. And go where? Canton's smile is thin. I've spent 20 years building this life. I'm not running from Bill Dunn or anyone else. You dismount, unsure why you're staying. This isn't your battle, but something keeps you here. Curiosity, maybe, or some misplaced sense of loyalty, or perhaps just a desire to see how the story ends. You don't have to stay, Canton says, reading your thoughts. This is between me and Dunn. I know, but I'm staying anyway. He accepts this with a nod, then returns to watching the road. The minutes stretch like hours as the sun continues its descent. Shadows lengthen across the dusty ground. Somewhere a nighthawk calls, its voice lonely in the gathering dusk. Tell me something, you say, breaking the silence. Did you really kill innocent homesteaders during the Johnson County War? Like Dunn claimed. Canton's face hardens. The Johnson County War wasn't about innocents on one side and villains on the other. It was complicated, messy. That's not an answer. No, it isn't, he sighs. I did things in Wyoming I'm not proud of. Things I justified to myself at the time because I was on the payroll of powerful men. But I never shot an unarmed man in the back. Never killed, except when my own life was threatened. Whether that's the full truth, you'll never know. But it's the closest to a confession you're likely to get from Frank Canton. Rider coming. Canton says suddenly, straightening in his chair. Looks like Bill's decided to face me straight up after all. You peer down the road. Sure enough, A lone horseman approaches at a walk, silhouetted against the setting sun, the distinctive shape of Bill Dunn coming to avenge his brother's death. Last chance to leave, Canton tells you. I'll stay out of it, you promise. But I'm watching. Canton stands, checking his revolver one final time before holstering it. He steps off the porch into the yard, waiting as Bill Dunn draws closer. It's a strange moment, almost ceremonial. Two enemies approaching each other in the dying light, surrounded by the vast emptiness of the frontier. No law but what they make themselves. No justice but what they deal with their own hands. Bill reins in his horse 30 yards from the cabin, dismounting slowly. His rifle remains in its saddle, scabbard a statement of intent. This will be settled with revolvers man to man. Canton, he calls voice carrying clearly in the still evening air. Got something to settle between us? I know why you're here, Dunn. Canton responds, standing his ground. But it won't bring your brother back. Or no, it won't. Bill advances, hand hovering near his holstered weapon, but it'll balance the scales. They face each other across 20 yards of dust and scraggly grass. You watch from the edge of the porch, heart pounding. This is how legends are born in the West. 2 men, 2 guns, 1 survivor. You know my reputation. Cannon says evenly, you've seen what happened to be. Walk away, Dunn. Live to fight another day. Can't do that. Bill replies, you know that. Canton nods, resigned. Then let's do this properly. No more words. Draw when you're ready. Time seems to slow. Birds fall silent. The whole world holds its breath. Both men stand poised, muscles tense, eyes locked on each other. Bill moves first, his hand dropping to his revolver with impressive speed. But Canton is faster, unnaturally fast. His gun clears leather and fires while Bill's is still rising. The crack of the shot echoes across the landscape. Bill staggers, a look of surprise crossing his face. A dark stain spreads across his shirt, almost the same spot where Bill was hit. He manages to fire his own weapon, but the bullet goes wild, kicking up dust at Canton's feet. Damn, Bill whispers, dropping to his knees. You really are that fast. His revolver falls from nerveless fingers. He pitches forward into the dirt, blood pooling beneath him. Canton approaches cautiously, gun still trained on a fallen man, but it's unnecessary. Bill Dunn is dead, eyes staring sightlessly at the darkening sky. For a long moment, Canton stands over his fallen enemy, face unreadable. Then he holsters his weapon and turns to you. It's done, he says simply. But is it? 2 Dunn brothers remain, Dal and George. Will they continue the vendetta or take this as a warning and leave the territory? That night, as word of Bill Dunn's death spreads through Pawnee, you sit with Canton on his porch, a bottle of whiskey between you. The stars emerging one by one overhead. What happens now? You ask with your suspension, the Joe Herr business. Canton takes a thoughtful sip. Already got a telegram from Marshal Nix. He's arguing my case with the governor. 20 years of service against ancient charges. Odds are in my favor. And if they're not, he shrugs, then maybe Joe Herr dies again. Maybe Frank Canton becomes someone new. The West is still big enough to reinvent yourself if you need to. You consider this the strange fluidity of identity out here on the frontier. How a man can shed his skin like a snake, emerge as something new. How the line between outlaw and lawman is as thin as a wanted poster. What about you? Canton asks, still planning to ride out. The question catches you off guard. You've been so focused on the conflict between Canton and the Dunns, you haven't thought about your own path forward. Not sure, you admit, might be time for something new. Canton nods, understanding the bounty hunting life. It changes you, makes you see people differently, as targets, as dollar amounts. Is that why you switched sides, became a lawman? He stares into his whiskey, contemplative partly, but mostly I just got tired of running. Wanted to build something that would last. The irony isn't lost on either of you. Canton built his new life on a foundation of lies. And now those lies threaten to bring everything crashing down. Dal and George left town, you tell him. changing the subject. Saw them riding out just after sundown heading west. Looked like they're smarter than their brothers. Canton observes. No in a fold a losing hand. But even as he says it, you both know this might not be over. Vendettas have a way of persisting in the West, passed down like twisted inheritances. The surviving Dunns might be biding their time, waiting for Canton to lower his guard. Get some sleep? Canton says finally, rising from his chair. Tomorrow's soon enough to decide what comes next. As you walk back to your cabin through the quiet streets of Pawnee, you feel the weight of choices pressing down. Stay or go. Keep the blood money or leave it behind. Continue this life of hunting humans or find something new. The bounty from Doolin's death would buy a decent ranch somewhere or passage to Alaska, where the gold rushes are drawing thousands or maybe something else entirely. A normal life, if such a thing exists for someone who's done what you've done. In your cabin. You pry up the loose floorboard and look at the stacks of bills hidden beneath. Blood money. Death money. But money all the same. Across town, Frank Canton sits alone on his porch, watching the road for ghosts that might yet appear. Joe Herr's past and Frank Canton's present, twined together like a hangman's rope. And somewhere in the vast darkness beyond Pawnee, Dal and George Dunn ride west, carrying memories of dead brothers and plans for vengeance that may or may not come to fruition. The Wild West is changing. The frontier closing. The days of outlaws and bounty hunters numbered. But for now, in this moment, the old ways still hold. Men still die for honor, for money, for vengeance, and the line between hunter and hunted remains as blurred as ever. The morning after Bill Dunn's death dawns with unexpected rain. Fat droplets fall from a pewter sky, turning Pawnee's dirt streets to mud, washing away the blood outside Canton's cabin. You stand on your porch, watching townspeople hurry between buildings, heads down against the weather, whispering about yesterday's shooting. 2 Dunn brothers dead in less than a week, both by Frank Canton's hand. The undertaker is doing good business these days. You've made your decision during the long, sleepless night. The bounty money stays hidden under the floorboards of your cabin. A gift to whoever finds it years from now. You're riding out today. Rain or no rain. This chapter of your life is finished. A rider approaches through the rain, hunched in a slicker that can't quite keep out the downpour. Marshal Everett Nix himself come all the way from Guthrie. His face is grim as he dismounts outside the sheriff's office. Whatever news he brings, it isn't good. Curious, you follow at a distance. Inside, you find Canton already seated across from Nix's temporary desk. The marshal hasn't bothered to remove his wet coat, suggesting this meeting won't be long. Frank, Nix nods in greeting as you enter. Or should I call you Joe? Canton's face remains impassive. Frank will do. You put me in one hell of a spot. Nix continues. 2 Dunns dead, both shot by you, one wearing a deputy marshal's badge. Be Drew first, Canton says flatly, and Bill came hunting me. Both clean kills. I don't doubt it. Nix sighs, pulling off his wet hat. But perception matters, especially with your history coming to light. You lean against the wall, silent but attentive. This is the moment when Canton's fate will be decided. When 20 years of lawman work gets measured against a youthful crime spree in Texas. The governor's reviewed your case. Nix says finally, given your service record and the circumstances of the Dunn's deaths, he's inclined to be lenient. Canton doesn't react, but you see the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. But Nix holds up a finger. He can't have an acknowledged outlaw serving as a territorial lawman. Too much ammunition for his political enemies. I understand, Canton says quietly. I'll resign. Already handled that part. Nix slides a paper across the desk. Effective immediately. You're civilian again, Frank. Canton stares at his resignation letter for a long moment before tucking it into his coat. And the Texas warrant is still in effect technically. Nix grimaces, but I've had words with the Texas authorities. They're not particularly interested in pursuing a 20-year-old bank robbery case. Not worth the extradition hassle. As long as you maintain a low profile, They'll let sleeping dogs lie. It's not a pardon, but it's freedom of a sort. Canton can live as a private citizen without constantly looking over his shoulder. It's more than most outlaws get. What will you do now? You ask Canton as you both leave the sheriff's office. He squints up at the rain-heavy sky. Not sure. Been a lawman so long. I don't know if I remember how to be anything else. Back at your cabin, you saddle your horse and strap on your few belongings. The bounty money remains hidden on the floor, your own private act of penance. Blood money should stay buried. A knock at your door reveals Canton, still damp from the rain. Heard you're riding out, he says. You nod. Nothing left for me here. Where you headed? North, maybe, where there's gold in Alaska. Canton's eyes light up with unexpected interest. Alaska, huh? Been thinking about that myself. You'd leave Oklahoma? You asked, surprised. Despite everything, Canton seemed rooted here. He shrugs. What's keeping me? No badge, no authority, and 2 dead Dunns whose brothers might still come looking for revenge. He pauses. Considering Alaska's about as far as a man can go without leaving American soil. It's cold, you worn, and lawless in its own way. Cold I can handle, and lawless. Canton's smile is wry. I've got experience with that from both sides. You hadn't planned on traveling with company, especially not Frank Canton. But there's something appealing about having a former lawman along for the journey north, especially one as handy with a gun as Canton. I'm leaving today, you say. Rain or no rain. Give me an hour to pack, Canton replies. One last piece of business to settle first. As Canton walks away, you wonder what final loose end needs tying up. Then you remember the surviving Dunn brothers, Dal and George, were last seen riding west. But are they really gone? An hour later, you're mounted up and ready when Canton rides up on his tall bay gelding. He's traveling light. 1 pack horse with supplies, his weapons, and whatever personal items he values enough to bring along. Business settled. You ask as you turn your horses north, as much as it can be. He answers cryptically. The rain has settled into a steady drizzle as you ride out of Pawnee. A few townspeople watch you go, but most stay inside out of the weather. No one seems particularly sorry to see either of you leave. Too much death has followed in your wake. 3 days north, camped beside a small creek. Canton finally explains his business back in Pawnee. Went to see Dal and